Jen and I have broken several bombs in the Flint water crisis over the last 2 weeks. The first bomb, let me find it here, where we broke the story that former governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, his chief of staff, his treasurer, and his right-hand man were all secretly subpoenaed by prosecutors in the Flint water investigation. Snyder himself was under aggressive investigation. Snyder was warned about the toxic water in Flint a year before the water switch, so he got warnings about the dangers of using the Flint River as a drinking water source. He also became aware of the Legionella outbreak that killed as many as 115 people in October 2014. That would be 16 months before he told, 16 months earlier than he told Congress. We also broke news that Snyder's right-hand man allegedly issued payoffs to several Flint residents to keep them quiet and not go to the media and not be publicly outspoken against the Snyder administration. Bottom line, read the story. We broke a major, major story. And honestly, the media, just like they have really taken a vacation here on covering the Tara Reade allegations, the media, it has been a epic battle to get the national media to cover what we broke. We did break it with Vice, which to my knowledge is a pretty reputable outlet. But still, we have gotten national journalists, national editors telling us, oh, this is kind of a local story and we're busy with the coronavirus pandemic. I explained to them, oh, gee, I didn't know that the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century was a local story. Thanks for letting me know. I also brought to their attention that there is a link to the coronavirus because right now, there is literally an 11.5% death rate in Genesee County. Flint is part of Genesee County. 11.5% death rate in Genesee County. Guess the percentage of the cases in Genesee County are from Flint. 50% of the cases are from Flint and Flint Township. Now, Flint Township the whole part of Flint Township wasn't on the Flint water, but a lot of parts of Flint Township was on the Flint water system. So when you add Flint and Flint Township together, 50% of the cases in Genesee County are from Flint. And the 11.4% fatality rate in Genesee County is significantly higher than the U.S. rate. Last time I checked, it was 5 point something U.S., so that's 6 points higher. So why do you think Flint is making up the half of the cases in Genesee County, which has over 400,000 people that live there? Maybe because all ages are severely compromised and vulnerable to this. So before we broke this story today, we reached out to the Attorney General of Michigan, because obviously in all of these stories we've tried to be fair. Governor Snyder never responded to us, and others that we investigated never responded to us. But if you don't know, in Flint, there was kind of like a Robert Mueller, so to speak. There was a special prosecutor who was tasked with the Flint water criminal investigation because the Attorney General's office didn't want to investigate the state, so they offshored it to a special prosecutor. That special prosecutor was working for the previous Attorney General, so technically the previous Attorney General / special prosecutor had charged 15 state and city officials, including 2 of the top officials. Then, when the new Attorney General came in, Democrat Dana Nessel, she fired the special prosecutor, some of his investigators, and then later she dropped charges against 8 defendants, including the 2 highest level state officials, the health director, the health department's director, who was a cabinet member for Governor Snyder, and the chief medical executive. She dropped those charges, essentially pointing blame at the previous prosecutors, which, whatever. I'm not going to get into what I think about that. So we started looking in the statute of limitations for misconduct in office, which is a felony, passed on Saturday. Saturday was the 6th anniversary of the Flint water crisis. It was also that day the statute of limitations for felony misconduct in office. In response to our Vice story, the Attorney General's office came out basically saying that, well, there's a misconception, basically talking about our report, that the statute of limitations is Saturday. We didn't report that the statute of limitations for all charges was Saturday. Felony misconduct in office, yes, because it's 6 years in Michigan is the statute of limitations. So the Attorney General's lead prosecutors on the criminal investigation, they met with Flint residents last year in June, and those prosecutors, her prosecutors, told residents we're up against the statute of limitations in 9 months, which was Saturday. So I don't really know what that statement was about, but putting that aside, so we started looking into the Attorney General's office. Again, they say they're still actively investigating, but we found some things that, leave it to you if you think this might be a potential conflict of interest here. Days after the statute of limitations passed with no charges, we did this for the Detroit Metro Times, myself, Jen, and Detroit journalist Charlie LaDuff, who's a great journalist out there. We worked together on this. Metro Times has uncovered new details that may suggest potential conflicts of interest close to Nessel in relation to the water crisis. Nessel is the Attorney General of Michigan. Metro Times learned that Nessel's communication director, Kelly Rossman-McKinney, a former Michigan Senate candidate and longtime Michigan PR guru, who was dubbed the Democratic half of the bipartisan Michigan PR firm Truscott Rossman, advised two of Governor Snyder's ex-Flint emergency managers, Darnell Early and Ed Kurtz, along with ex-Flint Public Works Director Howard Croft, on the water crisis. Darnell Early, let me just break this down for you. Darnell Early, who was appointed by Governor Snyder, and Ed Kurtz, who was appointed by Governor Snyder. Again, she consulted, apparently pro bono, PR, crisis communications, what have you, consulted them on the water crisis. Darnell Early was charged with felony crimes. So was Howard Croft. They were both charged, Ed Kurtz wasn't, with felony crimes by Nessel's predecessor, Bill Schuette, and the special prosecutor, and Nessel dropped those charges. To be clear, we are not saying by any means that Nessel dropped the charges because her communications director had done work for Governor Snyder's administration or emergency managers he appointed. However, this would look to some like a potential conflict of interest. Let's go on. The work was previously reported on by the Detroit Free Press as Rossman-McKinney giving pro bono water advice to Flint without identifying the recipients of her advice. She was a big PR person, so obviously advising public officials on what their public statements should be, what they should not be saying, spin, they call it. Two of the officials Rossman-McKinney advised, Early and Croft, were charged by Nessel's predecessor, AG Bill Schuette, in 2016. He was Republican, with false pretenses related to the KWA bond deal, which was allegedly fraudulent. Remember, Flint was on the Flint River temporarily while a new pipeline, the KWA pipeline, was being built. In 2019, Nessel dropped those charges alongside Flint's water charges pending against 5 other defendants. Rossman-McKinney's role as AG Nessel's communications director, while the AG was dropping charges against 2 defendants that Rossman-McKinney had consulted for, poses a political problem for Nessel. Former Genesee County prosecutor Arthur Bush tells the Metro Times, quote, "The political problem obviously is if she, Nessel, has advisors that were working for the other side, Snyder, of the team, it definitely doesn't look good. If she, Nessel, has somebody that's cheering against her from the inside of her office, that kind of begs the question why she doesn't wall that person off." To be clear, he didn't say there was any legal conflicts where Nessel where Nessel was disqualifying herself from the criminal investigation. So I want to show you just some of Rossman-McKinney, who is the Attorney General of Michigan's communications director, some of the consulting she did for Rick Snyder's administration. She, quote, "The issue is out of hand," Rossman-McKinney wrote to Snyder's chief of staff, Dennis Muchmore, in February 2015 regarding the water crisis fallout. "I'm concerned about the implications that the water crisis, may have racial overtones." Nearly a year later, she issued a tweet in response to a Vox News article suggesting Flint's lead poisoning wasn't a race issue, except in, quote, except in Flint, where all kids, regardless of race, are at risk. I mean, technically, yeah, white and black children were at risk of lead poisoning, but I mean, Flint's 53% black, so I guess I would say more black children were greater at risk. The Snyder administration's relationship with Rossman-McKinney's firm seemed to go both ways. In November 2015, Snyder's press secretary, Sarah Werfel, joined Rossman-McKinney's PR firm as vice president of public affairs. This is really important here. Before joining Nessel in the AG's office, Rossman-McKinney publicly spoke out in support of Snyder and against AG Nessel's predecessor, Bill Schuette's charges against Snyder administration officials. Hey, Jen, do you mind just going into that call we're supposed to have and tell them I'm going to be a little bit late? I sent you the link yesterday. So, Rossman-McKinney, who is the communications director for Attorney General Nessel, who, by the way, they are possibly investigating Rick Snyder, we don't know. She tweeted out in 2017, ridiculous overreach in relations to Nessel's predecessor charging Snyder's top cabinet official with involuntary manslaughter related to the water crisis. So she's been public. She did not support charges against officials in Snyder's administration. As we're showing you, she was consulting the Snyder administration during the water crisis. Rossman-McKinney also endorsed the belief that it was flaws in government bureaucracy that led to the water crisis, not misdeeds or negligence by Governor Snyder. Here's a tweet. Karl Rove praises one tough nerd, Snyder, for stepping up to the plate to fix the Flint water situation. Says wasn't Snyder's fault, but bureaucracy. Rossman-McKinney tweeted on March 4th. That talking point, which ironically is usually created by PR people like Rossman-McKinney, I mean, Snyder used that talking point in interviews with Morning Joe and other places that, it just was the left hand of government, didn't know what the right hand of government was doing here. So she also, not a crime, free to donate to whatever politician you want, but Attorney General Nessel's communications director donated $700 donated $800 in total from 2010 to 2019 to Governor Snyder. This is interesting because Attorney General Nessel, when she was a candidate for office, criticized the special prosecutor, Todd Flood, who again was kind of the Robert Mueller of Flint investigating, criticized him for having a conflict of interest because he had donated to Snyder. I think he donated $3,000, I think it was, to Snyder. So she said Flood had a conflict of interest and then fired him when she became Attorney General, but her communications director donated to Rick Snyder in addition to the public statements supporting him. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.